मैम की क्लास 4:40 पे है ना, मेरे पास 9 मिनट का ऊपर नीचे तो कोई फर्क नहीं। Hello everyone, this is Pulkit, the history faculty at the Vedanta IS Academy. As you all know that we started off with a module on world history for the mains examination in the yesterday's class. So in the yesterday's class I gave you the introduction to world history, that what exactly the books we need, what exactly are the things, the resources you need to refer to for the world history module. Sorry. In today's class, we will be starting off with the first chapter or the first topic of the world history, which is your American Revolution 1776 till 1783. American Revolution 1776 until 1783, right? So first of all, let us see that what exactly do we need to read in this particular topic. First thing which we need to read is background to the colonization of America, right? Then the causes or events leading to the revolution, like socio-cultural, political and economic, right? Background, causes and events during the revolution or revolutionary period, and finally the significance of the event on the future developments in the world. In the future developments in the world, right? So that is what we need to understand when we are talking about the American Revolution, right? First of all, हमें background के अंदर ये देखना है कि like we talked yesterday, Columbus was someone who was sponsored by one of the European countries, and he accidentally landed on the American shores, right? I'm saying landed, I'm not saying discovered, right? Because America was already inhabited. It was, even if I use the word discovered will be in the sense of the European people, क्योंकि उन्होंने पहली बार देखा है. America was already there, right? So Columbus landed on the American shores, right, for the first time in the 15th century or towards the end of the 15th century, and slowly and steadily after that, what started to happen is the colonization of America began, right? Britain, France, Spain, right? All these people started to lay their claims on the American continent, right? Britishers, they were more along the Atlantic Ocean. Their colonies were more along the Atlantic Ocean. So they had 13 colonies in the Atlantic Ocean. Colonies like Massachusetts, New York, Delaware, right? All these colonies were actually Connecticut, Rhode Island. All these were actually the part of your British occupation in America, right? And The French people were mostly in the Canada, right? They were mostly in the Canadian region. They were, I have forgotten the spelling of Canada. Canada, yeah. Sorry. Right? So the Americans were, the French were mostly in the Canada region. So 13 colonies belonged to the Britishers. French were in the Canadian region before 1763. So this is how exactly the American got colonized. This is what we are going to study first of all in today's class. That is the background to American colonization, right? Then the second part in which we are interested is the causes of the revolution, causes or the events leading up to the revolution, right? So first of all, the most interesting part which we need to understand is, like we did in modern Indian history also, causes. Causes hote hain long term and there are certain short term causes. Causes, when we are studying for the American Revolution, can be broadly divided into three parts: socio-cultural, political and economic, right? So these are the three heads under which we are going to study the causes of the revolution. Causes, जो कि long term causes will be studying, and we will be also focusing on what actually acted as an immediate trigger to the revolution in America. कि अचानक से कैसे हुआ कि revolution start हो गई in America. So that will be also studied, and then we will focus on the events leading up to the freedom of America from Britain. We will not be focusing in कि battle के अंदर क्या हुआ, कि अमेरिकन आर्मीज और ब्रिटिश आर्मीज के बीच में जो बैटल्स हो रही हैं, उस बैटल में कौन कहां लड़ रहा है, कौन कितने लोग मर रहे हैं, कौन कैसे फाइट कर रहा है, क्या टेक्निक है, दैट इज नॉट आवर पॉइंट ऑफ कंसर्न, राइट? आवर पॉइंट ऑफ कंसर्न इज ओनली अंडरस्टैंडिंग द इवेंट्स, कि एग्जैक्टली इवेंट्स को बहुत ऊपर ऊपर से हमें पढ़ना है, सो दैट वी गेट अ सेंस कि हाँ जो रेवोल्यूशन हुआ है, that happened in such a manner. So that is what we will be studying, and then finally we will be studying the significance of the event, right? Significance of the event is also very important, right? So we will be studying the significance also कि American Revolution ने क्या फ्यूचर में किसी और रेवोल्यूशन को इंस्पायर करा या लोगों को इंस्पायर करा, या अमेरिकन रेवोल्यूशन के बाद ऐसे कोई इवेंट्स हुए which actually had a very major effect on the future course of history, right? Like for example, I just give you an example. In 1789, America had the world's first written constitution. So the world's first written constitution was done in America, and also at the same time they had a republican government in place. Republican government meaning that the head of the state will be elected, right? It will not be a hereditary position, it will be an elected position. So all these things actually inspired various movements all across the world, not only immediately but also later on, like in India, like in Africa, right? All these movements took the example of the American Revolution, right? So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the significance of the American Revolution, right? So all these things will be studied by us in this particular topic, right? But before moving on to the topic, what I like to do is, first of all, I like to give you two questions, right? You have to choose one for right now. You choose one question, you write that particular question and give it to me. Some people have already given me some questions which I need to correct, because like there are 7 or 8 things which I needed to correct. So it will take 1 or 2 days for me to correct, right? तो वो तुम्हें मिल जाएगा correct, okay? That is not a problem at all. But let us first write today's question, right? कि exactly आज का question क्या है? Let's focus on today's question, right? Okay. So the question is the American War of Independence. The American War of Independence led to the drifting of a great colonial empire. Led to a drifting of the great colonial empire of Great Britain, full stop. But at the same time, it led to consolidation of another empire for Britishers in the world. Examine 250 words. Examine 250 words. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about this particular question. Right? That the American War of Independence led to the drifting of a great colonial empire of Great Britain, but at the same time it led to the consolidation of another empire for Britishers in the world. Examine. And the word limit is 250 words. And the word limit is 250 words, right? I'll also tell you one more thing. So when you start practicing for UPSC, when you start writing your mains examination answer, so एक चीज बहुत interesting तुम कर सकते हो, because this is the time of pandemic. I won't suggest you people to go out and buy these papers, but what you can do is, if you have plain papers at home, draw margins on the four sides and try writing within these particular margins only, right? If you go to the market, there are certain sheets which are available, which are similar to the sheets which you get in the UPSC examination and which has UPSC written on the top of it. So वो sheets भी आती हैं, but avoid going out and make these sheets at home only. चारों तरफ margin बना के and try and write your answer within these particular margins, right? So your answer should have an introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So these are the three parts of answer which you people need to write when we are talking about the mains answer writing. So this is one question which we have to do, right? There's another question which I'm going to give you now. There's another question which I'm going to give you now. Question is, this is question number 2. Question is, the American War of Independence. The American War of Independence was a fight between mercantilist ideas of the old world and capitalist ideas of the new world, and the capitalist ideas of the new world. Examine. Again, 200 words. If you people remember, I gave you a question yesterday in which you had to write the ideology, what is mercantilism and what is capitalist ideas. तो ये आइडियोलॉजी अगर आपको पता होगी, एंड आफ्टर टुडेज लेक्चर यू विल गेट अ कंप्लीट सेंस कि कैसे ब्रिटिशर्स वर ट्राइंग टू इंपोज मर्केंटिलिज्म एंड कैसे द अमेरिकन्स वर ट्राइंग टू ड्रिफ्ट टुवर्ड्स योर कैपिटलिस्ट आइडियाज, राइट? So this is another question for you people to practice, right? If you people want to do one question, you can do that. If you want to do two questions, again your wish, right? I am comfortable with everything. You can actually write it and give it to me whenever you want, right? So that is the basic idea, right? Let's now move forward to the topic. The question is also done. Now let's move forward to the topic. Okay. The topic for today is American Revolution. Okay. Revolution का basic मतलब क्या है? Before entering into this particular topic, हमें सबसे पहले ये पता होना चाहिए that what exactly do we understand by the term revolution, right? Revolution का मतलब होता है that the thing change rapidly, things change rapidly over a period of time, and sometimes they change for a good, sometimes they change for a bad, right? Sometimes the change might have a positive effect, sometimes the change might have a negative effect. So revolution means a watershed point, a dividing line between what was happening before and what is now going to happen after that, right? So the change in the society, the sudden change in the society can be seen as a revolution. So why exactly we call it an American Revolution? We call it an American Revolution because within a span of 5 to 6 years, the American got independence from the Britishers, right? So Americans were able to achieve the freedom from the autocratic rule of the British Empire in America, right? तो ये एक सबसे interesting चीज है which we need to understand when we are talking about the American Revolution. तो American War of Independence जो है, which is synonymous with American Revolution, that happened between patriots, right? That happened between patriots, that is the Americans supporting new ideas, plus the French Empire versus the British plus the Loyalists. Loyalists were also settled in America only, right? They were part of the American colonies only, but they supported the continuation of British rule, right? So loyalists were the people who said, yeah, जो British का rule चल रहा है ना, that should actually go on. It should not end, right? So this is how exactly the American Revolutionary War can be seen. There were certain people who were known as the patriots. Patriots as in the sense George Washington, Benjamin Franklin के ideas, right? Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine. So all these people can be characterized as your patriots. So these were Samuel Adams. So these were the people who wanted to get rid of the Britishers, because according to them, the Britishers were kind of very, very autocratic power. They were someone who were not letting the Americans grow to their fullest potential. तो वो कहते हैं यार अब बहुत हो गया Britishers का, and now the Britishers should actually go away from this particular land. So this is what the patriots wanted, and they were supported in this endeavor by the French Empire. French Empire, especially after 1763 events, right? Especially after 1763 events. A French Empire and the British Empire, they got into a fight with each other from 1756 until 1763, known as the 7 Years' War, in which the French were defeated and they had to concede their area of Canada to the Britishers. So in order to take the revenge from the British, they supported the Americans, known as the Patriots, right? So इसको हम और detail में पढ़ेंगे. Just for the starters, I have told you that why exactly the French Empire supported the Patriots, and at the same time they were fighting against the Britishers and the people who never wanted the British rule to end. So this is something which is very very interesting at the outset. ठीक है, समझ में आया कि अमेरिकन रिवॉल्यूशन किन दो फैक्शंस के बीच में हो रही थी, right? Now let's go on to the background to this particular event, right? To this particular event, let's go to the background. Right? So 1492, Columbus reached Americas, right? Columbus reached America, right? So this is what we need to understand, or very very precisely, he reached West Indies or the Caribbean islands, right? So he reached over there, and slowly and steadily, various European powers colonized North America, or North American, sorry, only North America is fine, right? Slowly and steadily, various European powers captured various North American territories. Chief amongst them were Spain, France, and your Britain, right? So these were the three major colonies which were interested in the North American territories, right? तो इन लोगों ने धीरे धीरे नॉर्थ अमेरिका को कॉलोनाइज करना स्टार्ट करा. अब इसको कॉलोनाइज करने के पीछे रीजन क्या था? इसके पीछे मेजर रीजन ये था दैट अमेरिका वाज अ सोर्स ऑफ गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर, राइट? अमेरिका हैड ह्यूज रिजर्व्स ऑफ गोल्ड एंड सिल्वर, राइट? तो उससे होता क्या था? व्हाट दीस पीपल यूज्ड टू डू इज, so this was your new world, which is your America. This is your old world, which is your Europe, and this is your third world, which is your Asia, mainly India and China, right? Mainly India and China. That is something which we need to understand. अब होता क्या था? Before the Industrial Revolution in Europe, that is before the 18th century, Europe, when it used to trade with the third world or with Asia, तो क्या होता था? यूरोप के पास जो कमोडिटीज हैं, यूरोप के पास जो चीजें हैं एक्सचेंज करने के लिए विद एशिया, वर नॉट ऑफ वेरी वेरी हाई क्वालिटी, राइट? यूरोप वाज नॉट एबल टू प्रोक्योर गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज which were of any use to the Asians, especially India and China, right? जब उनके पास यूरोपियंस के पास चीजें ही नहीं है प्रॉपरली ट्रेड करने के लिए, so the Asians also got disinterested in trading with European people. लेकिन once America was discovered in 1492. So what started to happen is it started to supply bullion. And what exactly is bullion? It is gold and silver. It started to supply gold and silver to Europe, right? Supply se zyada better word hai. The Europeans started to extract gold and silvers from America, right? Gold and silver from America was taken, and now they used to transfer this gold and silver to the Asian people, to basically India and China. So India and China got gold and silver or bullion in return for the products they traded with the Europeans, right? So the balance of trade was in the favor of the Asian people. So this is how exactly America was very, very important for the European people in its initial days, or in the days before the Industrial Revolution happened in that particular continent, right? So this is how exactly America was being exploited by the European powers, by extracting its gold and silver and using that gold and silver for import, for getting products from Asia. So this is very, very important use of America. So this is exactly the background which we are talking about prior to the happening of the American Revolution, right? Now let's move forward. Right? Okay. What happened further is between 1600s and 1700s starting, between 1600 and 1700 starting, Britain got 13 colonies, or Britain, better word is, captured 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast. Along the Atlantic coast, Britain was able to get or capture 13 colonies. I told you the name of the 13 colonies, which was Delaware, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, right? All these places along the Atlantic Ocean, all the colonies along the Atlantic Ocean were captured by the British people, right? So they became the property of the British, right? So now the British exploited these particular colonies for their own benefit. So that is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the background to the American Revolution, that the British had their 13 colonies. British had their 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast, and at the same time Canada was with the French. So French had their presence in Canada. So ये सारी चीजें हैं which we need to understand before we go on to the causes of the revolution. So this is the background to the American Revolution. Just to recap it, that the Europeans discovered America. They discovered that America has lots of potential in terms of gold and silver. So they started extracting that gold and silver, and they started exporting that gold and silver in return for products from Asia, right? And at the same time, Britain and French, they expanded their presence in America. Britain along the Atlantic coast and the French in the Canadian region expanded their influence. So this is something which you need to understand before we go on to the causes of the revolution, right? So now let's move forward to the causes of the revolution. Okay. Causes of the revolution. Right? If you people remember, like when we were doing 1857 revolt, we saw there were certain long-term causes, and we also saw that there were certain short-term causes which acted as a trigger. So now we will see in this particular section on the causes कि exactly चीजें कैसे हो रही हैं in the American continent, right? So first of all, the cause is socio-cultural cause. First important cause is socio-cultural cause. ठीक है? एक सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है which we need to understand is that the kind of people who were coming into America were actually the people who were escaping punishment in their own country. So there were people who were coming from Ireland, there were people who were coming from Scotland, there were people who were coming from Netherlands, there were people who were coming from France. So America cannot be seen as a homogeneous racial group, but it is a group which is consisted of various nationalities, right? और सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन हमारे सामने ये आता है that why exactly these people came running to America? सबसे इसमें रीजन क्या है? So the reason might be religious. अब क्या है? Most, like some kings can be Catholic, and his praja can be your reformist, or the praja can be following the protesting church. अब किंग को ये बात पसंद नहीं है. अब वो कहता है जो प्रोटेस्टेंट्स हैं पॉपुलेशन के अंदर मेरे किंगडम में, मैं उनको अब मारूंगा. अब ये लोग बेचारे डर गए कि यार किंग तो हमें मार देगा. So what they did is they found out a way to escape from that particular situation. So they found out that the people were going to Americas, right? So they boarded that particular ships very, very secretly, and they came to America, far away from that particular country of theirs. So in the starting, religious causes was the major kind of thing which drove people to America, right? Not only the religious, there were other kind of ideas which drove people to America, like किसी ने कुछ गलत काम कर दिया, somebody has cheated someone, अब उस punishment से बचना है, तो क्या करते थे वो कि whenever the ship was going to America, they used to secretly board that ship and come to America. So they kept on running from the punishment. So mostly the people who came to America in the first place were the persecutors. They were the people who were having certain kind of criminal records, right? They were not the people who were educated. They were not the people who were very, very refined in their manners, right? They were the people who were actually escaping punishments. So most of the peoples who came to America were of this particular nature, right? So first thing is lot of political and religious descendants or dissidents came to America. Who were escaping punishment in their native countries, right? So these were the certain people who came to the American continent, right? ये पहला lot of people था. Slowly and steadily what happened is the people who did not like the ideas of their home country, supposedly somebody was living in England, so they did not like what was going on in the society of that particular place. So they also moved out from that particular area and looked for better avenues. So they moved towards America, right? और उनके मूविंग इनटू अमेरिका एक और इंपॉर्टेंट मूवमेंट थी जिसके बारे में कल हम बात कर रहे थे, इनलाइटनमेंट. Enlightenment means rational and logical thinking. The movement of enlightenment also played a very, very important role of people moving to America. So, slowly and steadily, people with liberal thinking also came to America. People with liberal thinking also came to America. They were inspired by the Enlightenment thinkers. They were inspired by Enlightenment thinkers. Enlightenment thinkers कौन से? Like your John Locke, right? Montesquieu, right? Immanuel Kant. So all these people of the Enlightenment age, they inspired people to think in a different manner. All these philosophers, they inspired the people to think in a different manner, and then when their thinking developed towards liberal ideas, when they had more liberal and logical thinking, तो उन्हें लगा यार ये society में हम रह रहे हैं, it will not be able to accept our ideas, right? So now let's move out of this particular place. It's like the same thing when people, like most of the people in India, what they want to have a better lifestyle, they want to have a better job, well-paying job. What they do is, sometimes if they have the resources available with them, they try and move out of India in search of better avenues. Like they go to Australia, they go to Canada, they go to US, they go to Middle East. So this is how exactly people with liberal thinking, when they were not able to survive in that orthodox place, they moved out of that particular area. अब कैसे? Liberal thinking कैसे? Like liberal thinking के अंदर एक सबसे interesting point मैं आपको बताता हूँ. Like people said, why exactly this king, which is ruling us right now, will be replaced by his son only, no matter how idiot that particular son is? Why exactly his son will succeed him to the throne? Why not somebody who is intelligent, somebody who has a superior skills should succeed this particular king to the throne? Why only this hereditary succession is in place? Why can't I be the king? Why is that the people who are born in that particular family are the king? So these are certain ideas which started to inspire the people, right, against the orthodox ideas in the society. So liberal people, liberal thoughts, logical ideas started coming into the American society, right? So this is something which we need to understand when we are talking about the socio-cultural causes, right? The mindset of the people was something which was not going to follow the orthodox ideas. People are pretty liberal in the American society at that particular point of time, right? Okay. Asan says liberalism, property right. Yes. And also, Asim, if we talk about the Enlightenment thinker, we can actually also talk about another thinker known as Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who said that a king should only be having a social contract. If the people want him to be the king, then only he should be the king. If the people don't want him to be the king, he should be removed from the throne. Same way, property rights, that why exactly I am not able to do things if I am born in this particular family, why exactly that person is able to do things no matter how idiot he is, right? So all these ideas began to be seen, began to be surfaced in the society during the time of Enlightenment, right? So that is something which we need to understand. As far as the first point is concerned, what we need to understand is, if I talk about it, Tushar, the first point which we need is कि जो अमेरिका में पहले लोग आए, they were actually the people who were escaping punishment. They were actually having criminal records according to their countries, right? कि ये लोग कैथोलिक रिलीजन को फॉलो नहीं कर रहे, ये लोग प्रोटेस्टेंट रिलीजन को फॉलो कर रहे हैं, या वाइसा वर्सा भी हो सकता है, या लोगों ने चोरी करी तो सीक्रेटली वो अपने कंट्री से सीप आउट हो गए और वो वहां से उधर के रास्ते दे केम टू अमेरिका. सो ये सारी चीजें हैं which led to the first lot of migration to the American continent. साथ साथ में गोल्ड और सिल्वर जो था उसका लालच भी लोगों को अमेरिका की तरफ exactly खींच के ले आया. That is something which we need to understand when we are talking about this first important point. Like I talked about God and gold. God and gold. So these are the two important things which also attracted people to America. Some people wanted to propagate their religion, like the Protestants, they wanted to propagate their religion, so they came to America. Some people wanted to become rich, so they came to America. So this is how exactly it is an amalgamation of all these factors which led to the migration towards the new world in the first place, right? So this is the first important cause of the revolution, that the thinking of the people was not orthodox. They were more free in their thinking. They were more liberal in their thinking. So when the Britishers will try and impose their orthodox ideas, orthodox thinking on these particular people, so they will start protesting. और वो कैसे कैसे होगा, we will see now. Right? Okay. Right? So this was the socio-cultural reasons. Next is the political cause. Next is the political cause. Right? As I told you people, the migration from the old world to the new world was mainly of people who were quite liberal in their ideas, right? Who were quite progressive in their ideas, right? So that is something which we need to understand. और साथ साथ में एक और चीज थी, that before 1763, let's take 1763 as the cutoff point. Before 1763, Britain was also not very strict in administering the American colonies. Britain was also not very strict, right? तो हुआ क्या? ब्रिटेन ने इन लोगों को थोड़ा थोड़ा फ्रीडम दे दिया, right? कैसे? Like each colony of Britain in America will have a self-appointed legislative and executive body, right? So these people were given the freedom from the starting to execute and make their own laws, right? They were given the freedom. to execute and make their own laws. That was one freedom which was given, but at the same time, head or governors of each of these colonies, was appointed by the British. Right? So जो इन colonies का जो governor होता था, right, he was actually appointed by the British Crown or the British Parliament, right? So that is something which we need to understand. और ये जो governor होता था, who was appointed by the British Crown, he had veto powers. So this particular person had veto powers. So head of each colony had veto power. अगर ये दोनों bodies कुछ laws बनाती हैं और उस governor को लगता है कि ये laws are not suitable और these laws are not in the interest of the Britishers, तो वो उन laws को veto कर सकता है. He can actually nullifies that particular law. So that was the situation which was there in the colony. लेकिन before 1763, this kind of vetoing the acts made by the self-appointed committees बहुत ही कम देखा गया, right? Governor was there, but his control was very, very nominal. He was like, ठीक है, जो तुम लोग कर रहे हो ठीक है एक पॉइंट तक. तो क्या था, जो गवर्नर और सेल्फ अपॉइंटेड बॉडीज थी उनके बीच में एक तरीके से जो रिलेशनशिप था बिफोर 1763, दैट वाज क्वाइट हार्मोनियस, दैट वाज क्वाइट स्मूथ, राइट? ना गवर्नर ज्यादा उनके काम में टांग अड़ाते थे, ना वो लोग गवर्नर को ज्यादा चीजें चैलेंज करते थे, राइट? सो दैट वाज द सिचुएशन बिफोर 1763, right? So that is something which we need to understand. So this is the kind of political situation which was there in Americas, right? So now let's move on to another cause which is known as the economic cause. So economic cause will play a very, very important role in the revolution. So now is the economic causes, right? We will see that what exactly economic causes can be of this particular revolution. But before that, I need to take questions. Why did the French migrate to America by the wrong social principles? Okay, Rosal, they migrated to America, right, in search of this gold and everything. And what you also need to understand, that their constitution being based on liberty, equality and fraternity, that was after 1789. That is when the French Revolution has happened. That is when this whole idea of liberty, equality and fraternity came into being. Because before that, what we need to understand is that there was absolute monarchy in place in France, right? So the monarchy in France did not allow any kind of free hand to the people, right? So people were living under an autocratic rule. So Rosal, what you need to understand is, before 1789, most of the taxation burden of the society in France, जितना भी tax collect करा जाता था in French society, that was being done by the people having the minimum resources, right? And people having the maximum resources, like the nobles, like the king, they did not pay any sort of tax, right? So that is why the French people also got inspired to migrate to America. What you are saying is correct, but that is after 1789. Okay. So Asim has another question. Yes, sir. And freedom, equal laws and opportunity were put forward by John Locke and Rousseau. Absolutely, right? Like Rousseau said, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains, right? So that is again another idea in which Rousseau is trying to contemplate, in which Rousseau is trying to state, कि कहीं ना कहीं what a man wants is freedom to exercise his ideas, right? So that should be the basic minimum thing given to the people. And John Locke said, power of any state comes from the people, right? So they were now trying to infuse republican ideas into the minds of the population. That is why it is known as Enlightenment. Enlightenment was challenging the earlier orthodox ideas, जिसमें exactly king का बेटा king, noble का बेटा noble, और एक कारपेंटर का बेटा कारपेंटर, एक पेजेंट का बेटा पेजेंट, ये सब बनेगा. इन आइडियाज को एग्जैक्टली चैलेंज करा गया, राइट? सो दिस इज व्हाट एनलाइटनमेंट वाज ऑल अबाउट, एंड दैट इज समथिंग व्हिच वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड, राइट? ओके, now let's go on to the economic causes of the revolution, right? Okay, so slowly and steadily what started to happen is that the 13 colonies of the Britishers, they were being nominally administered by the British Crown before 1763. So 1763 should be taken off as the cut-off date for any sort of events in the American Revolution, right? So before 1763, the American administration by the British was very, very nominal. जो अमेरिकन्स वहां पर करना चाहते थे उनको थोड़ा बहुत वहां करने का फ्रीडम एग्जैक्टली दे दिया गया, राइट? तो दैट वाज द सिचुएशन बिफोर 1763. तो इसी सिचुएशन के चलते हुए सो देयर स्टार्टेड टू डेवलप अ ट्रेड बिटवीन द 13 colonies of Britain, right? So they are developed a trade nexus, you can say, network, you can say, between 13 colonies of Britain. Between 13 colonies of Britain, they are developed a trade nexus, right? अब trade जो हो रहा है, trade is not only about exchange of goods and commodities. Trade is also about exchange of ideas, right? It is also about making one interdependent on the other colony. अगर colony number A के बाद, या फिर you can also take another example, अगर कनेक्टिकट के पास कुछ चीजें कम है, so they can actually now get it from Rhode Island, right? So they develop a nexus of interdependence amongst the various colonies. साथ साथ में उनके जो ideas हैं, the liberal ideas of the society and the other ideas of the society, they also started to move from one place to another, right? So when the trade nexus developed between the 13 colonies of Britain, it led to the interdependence on each other, right? It led to a development of interdependence on each other. Also the liberal ideas began to flow from one place to another, right? जब तक आप बाहर निकलोगे नहीं, right? Even if you're going out for business purposes, right? तो उसमें क्या होता है? You not only exchange your commodities, what you also do is you also exchange ideas. सब लोग बैठते हैं, बात करते हैं, राइट? वो बताता है कि मेरे जगह पे ये हो रहा था, वो बताएगा मेरे जगह पे ये हो रहा था. So everybody start discussing ideas. Everybody start discussing the liberal aspect of the society. It is like the same thing which was happening in India during the time of the Britishers when railways was being introduced. So when the railway got introduced, so what it did for the people was it led to the exchange of ideas and it led to the development of nationalism. So same way as the trade network develops, so it led to the flow of liberal ideas from one place to another, right? So what happens is, when the liberal ideas began to flow from one place to another, so thinking of the people began to be very, very progressive. People became very, very progressive in their thinking, right? Progressive का मतलब एक और चीज है, that there was now a turn towards materialistic and individualistic thinking. Materialistic and individual thinking bordering on capitalism. Right? Now the people, they start to think in a manner कि हमारा profit इस trade से ज्यादा कैसे हो सकता है, right? So this is what capitalism is all about. Now the people are not thinking as a community in capitalism. Everybody is an individual in the scope of capitalism. Every person now wants the maximum amount of profit. So this is what individualistic thinking is doing. It is moving people towards the capitalist ideas in the society. Capitalism means an philosophy and ideology in which you are only concerned about the profit. You are not concerned about anything else. Somebody can die, somebody's hands can get cut during the working hours in the factories. You are not concerned. You are only concerned with getting more and more money. You are not even concerned with what is happening to the environment. So this is what capitalism starts to develop in America when the trade between these 13 colonies of Britain developed, right? So this is what we need to understand when we are talking about the economic causes, right? तो यहाँ पे capitalism develop हो रहा है in the American colonies, लेकिन the last point for today is लेकिन
India's #1 institute, Vedanta IAS Academy. Coaching for UPSC, Civil Services, State PCS for 12th and graduation student. Online smart classroom. Live class with Android app. Vedanta IAS Academy. Contact number 9911753333 or visit www.vedantaiasacademy.co.in. Branches at Rohini and Mukherjee Nagar, Delhi.
जो ब्रिटिश इनके मास्टर्स हैं, they are still in that mercantilistic fold of thinking. They are still in that mercantilistic fold of thinking. Mercantilism का मतलब क्या होता है? I hope you people have studied till now, but लेकिन let me just clarify the meaning of mercantilism is, mercantilism के अंदर क्या होता है? There are two things. Let me just explain you mercantilism properly on the board. Right? Mercantilism में क्या है, क्या नहीं है? See, this is your colony. Supposedly this is India, and this is your mother country, which is your Britain. Right? Which is your Britain. I'm just explaining you the concept of mercantilism. Right? Okay. अब होगा क्या? Earlier, when the industrial revolution had not started in England, right? तो इंग्लैंड के पास कुछ ज्यादा प्रोडक्ट्स होते नहीं थे to trade with India, so they used to transfer the gold and silver from America, right? But slowly and steadily, as we come towards the second half of the 18th century, so there occurred industrial revolution in England. Second half of 18th century, industrial revolution in इंग्लैंड. ठीक है, इंग्लैंड के अंदर इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन हो गए, उसके पास से प्रोडक्ट्स हो गए, बहुत ज्यादा प्रोडक्ट्स हो गए जिसको उसे अब ट्रेड करना है. ठीक है, तो यहां तक ये बात समझो. अब क्या है, उससे पहले क्या चल रहा है, दैट इंडिया बिफोर 18th century, India before 18th century is exporting its handicrafts and other products to Britain. ठीक है, हैंडीक्राफ्ट्स और सब कुछ चीजें ब्रिटेन की तरफ जा रहे हैं, एंड इट इज गेटिंग अ वेरी वेरी हैंडसम प्राइस. और यहां तक ये भी हो रहा है कि ब्रिटेन के खुद के गुड्स की बहुत कम मार्केट है इन देयर ओन कंट्री. तो जो हैंडीक्राफ्ट इंडिया के जा रहे हैं, दैट इज नॉट बेनिफिशियल फॉर द ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट, दैट इज नॉट बेनिफिशियल फॉर द ब्रिटिश मर्चेंट क्लास. तो अब वो क्या करेंगे, एज सून एज द इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन स्टार्ट टू पीक, इट स्टार्ट टू कम आउट इन फुल फ्लो, तो क्या होगा, ब्रिटेन के पास भी अपने प्रोडक्ट्स हैं, तो ब्रिटेन क्या करेगा, एज इट हैज मेड इंडिया इट्स कॉलोनी, राइट, ब्रिटेन ने इंडिया को अपनी कॉलोनी बना लिया, तो ब्रिटेन क्या करेगा, ब्रिटेन इज गोइंग टू ट्रांसफर और ट्रेड इट्स गुड्स टू इंडिया और विद इंडिया, राइट. जो ब्रिटेन के पास अपने गुड्स हैं वो उसे इंडिया में ले जाएगा, राइट. और जब दीज गुड्स आर गोइंग टू रीच इंडिया, व्हेन दीज गुड्स आर गोइंग टू रीच इंडिया, इट विल टेल इट्स गवर्नमेंट, क्योंकि इंडिया भी कॉलोनी है ब्रिटेन का, राइट. सो द मर्चेंट्स ऑफ ब्रिटेन आर एक्चुअली गोइंग टू टेल इट्स गवर्नमेंट कि आप हम पे जो कस्टम ड्यूटीज लगाने वाले हो, दे शुड बी मिनिमम. Custom duties क्यों? Because the products are coming from Britain to India, so custom duties were then kept at minimum. So when the products from the mother country, that is from Britain to India, were coming, so उनकी जो custom duties होती थी, they used to be very very minimum. So the end result was product was cheaper and its demand increased, राइट. जो प्रोडक्ट चीप होगा, ऑटोमेटिकली उसकी डिमांड धीरे धीरे इंक्रीज हो जाएगी. अब साथ साथ में इन लोगों ने और क्या चालाकी करी, जो इंडिया से प्रोडक्ट्स जाते थे टू ब्रिटेन, जो इंडिया से ब्रिटेन की तरफ प्रोडक्ट्स जाते हैं, दे यूज्ड टू लेवाई ह्यूज अमाउंट्स ऑफ कस्टम ड्यूटीज फ्रॉम 50 to 500%. 50 to 500% इन्होंने कस्टम ड्यूटीज इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स पे लगाना स्टार्ट कर दिया. तो ऑटोमेटिकली जो इंडियन प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उनकी वैल्यू इंक्रीज हो जाएगी, उनकी प्राइस इंक्रीज हो जाएगी. सो पीपल विल स्टॉप बाइंग इट. जब लोग खरीदेंगे ही नहीं, सो व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन इज दैट द इंडस्ट्रीज इन इंडिया विल स्टॉप प्रोड्यूसिंग इट. सो वंस द इंडस्ट्री स्टॉप प्रोड्यूसिंग इट, सो दे विल गो इन डिक्लाइन. इसमें फायदा किसका हुआ, सिर्फ ब्रिटेन का, क्योंकि इन्होंने इंडियन इंडस्ट्रीज को खत्म कर दिया है और सिर्फ अपने ही प्रोडक्ट्स का यहां पे एग्जैक्टली रूल स्टार्ट कर दिया है, राइट. सो बेसिकली द क्रक्स ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर मर्केंटिलिज्म इज दैट द होम कंट्रीज गवर्नमेंट एक्चुअली हेल्प्स its merchants by giving them protection in terms of custom duties and everything, so that their interests can be protected, right, so that their interests can be kept at the highest place, and at the same time the interests of the colonial people are not kept in mind at all. On the contrary, the colonial people are exploited for the benefit of the mother country. So mercantilism is giving of protection by the mother country to its merchants for their profits and benefits, and at the same time it is the exploitation of the colonial people by that mother country. So that is your mercantilism, right, in which the merchants actually urges their government to give them protection in terms of trade benefits. So that is nothing but your mercantilism. And this was an ideology which was there in Britain, even when it was present in America. But American colonies slowly and steadily started to develop capitalism. Now we will see in tomorrow's class how exactly the mercantilist interest and the capitalist interest, they started to clash with each other, right? So that is something in which we are going to see tomorrow. Okay. This is the end of the class. I'll just take up questions in the chat box. Yes, Anil, the slave trade was also existing, right? So this is the end of today's lecture. I'm just going to take the questions which are there in the chat box. So if you people want to leave, you can leave, or you can else listen to the question, right? Okay. So Anil has a question. So slave trade was also existed in this countries. Yes, Anil, the slave trade existed. Now let's see how. So this is America and West Indies with its plantations. So this is Europe and this is your Africa. This is Europe, this is America. So what happened is, so Europeans now wanted to take the maximum benefit of plantation, that is coffee, tea, rubber, all these things. लेकिन बेचारे यूरोपियंस के पास अपना तो इतना लेबर था नहीं, तो वो ट्रेड ये सब प्लांटेशंस में कैसे करें, एंड प्लांटेशंस वर ह्यूज इन वेस्ट इंडीज इन अमेरिकास. तो उन्होंने क्या करना स्टार्ट करा, दे स्टार्टेड टू कैप्चर पीपल फ्रॉम Africa. Like I had a paper in my master's known as a history of South Africa. तो अब होता क्या था, that these people from Britain, people from Portugal, people from Spain, तो वो क्या करते थे, अफ्रीका में उस टाइम पे ट्राइबल्स थे, अराउंड द 16th century, 15th century, they were tribal people. तो वो उन ट्राइबल पीपल को गन्स एंड एम्युनिशंस देते थे, क्योंकि बहुत सारे ट्राइब आपस में लड़ रहे हैं, तो उनको वो गन्स एंड एम्युनिशंस देते थे, और उसके बदले they used to get humans. And then these humans were transferred from Africa to your new world, that is America. और जो इनको पूरा slave trade होता था, that used to take place in such a pathetic condition कि बेचारे African slaves जो थे, they never used to like get the opportunity to even sit straight. उन्हें सब सारा टाइम लेटना पड़ता था, and the conditions were so unhygienic that 70% of the slaves they went, or 70% of the slaves actually died. So when they went from Africa to America, right? So this is what happened in the slave trade. Yes, the slave trade existed. For more details, you can actually watch 12 Years a Slave, something. That was a movie I watched long ago. 12 Years a Slave. So that is a very, very interesting movie. That is going to give you much better perspective. Okay. Shubham ka question. Sir, as we see here, both Britain and America sustained in harmony. So was there only the idea of capitalism which led to the revolution? Shubham, we will see tomorrow that it was not only the idea of capitalism, but also how exactly the Britishers were trying to shift their taxation burden. जो भी 1763 7 years war के बाद जो भी problems create हुए हैं for Britain, because Britain lost too many resources in winning that particular war, तो उन्होंने पूरे के पूरे taxation जो है अपने वहां पे ट्रांसफर कर दिया अमेरिका में कि इन लोगों से लूटो, राइट, जितना लूट सकते हो. So that was also a very important reason which led to this particular revolution, along with ideas, along with this ideology of capitalism and mercantilism. So there is no single thing or no, and also we cannot only say that capitalism was responsible. There were plethora of causes which were responsible for this particular revolution. Yes, Nishta, I think I've already answered this. Debt burden on England was also the cause of revolution. Yes. After 1763, let me just explain this right now. 1763, Britain won. But बेचारे के resources decreased. अब उसने कहा कि अमेरिका क्यों ना ये सारे resources जो हैं इनको दोबारा रिफर्बिश करा जाए एंड दे स्टार्टेड टू पुट द टैक्स बर्डन ऑन द अमेरिकन्स। वो अमेरिकन्स को बात सही नहीं लगी, उन्होंने अमेरिकन्स को बोला अगर तुम एग्जैक्टली न्यूज़पेपर भी खरीदते हो ना उसके ऊपर भी ब्रिटिश स्टैंप लगी होनी चाहिए। तो ब्रिटिश स्टैंप अगर लगी होगी तो उसका कुछ प्राइस था 1 शिलिंग, दैट इज 1/10 ऑफ द पाउंड। ये 1/10 ऑफ द पाउंड वाज एडेड टू द ओरिजिनल प्राइस, तो बेचारा पेपर और महंगा होने लग गया। इवन द लीगल डॉक्यूमेंट्स, ये सब चीजें उन्होंने सब चीजों पर टैक्सेस, शुगर पे क्या, ईंटों पे क्या, plastics पे क्या, everything was being taxed by the Britain. So this is how exactly the ideas which led to the revolution, right? Okay, so that is something which we need to understand, right? I think this is all I had for today. In the tomorrow's class we will see the events leading up to the revolution of America and its significance, and if the time permits we will also see the French Revolution, right? Okay, I'll see you people tomorrow. Thank you.